Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 12 Steps, 12 Signs, an Astrologer's Guide to Recovery. My name is Danny Santos, and I am here to walk you through the first sign of the zodiac, Aries. Now, as we go through our 12 steps and 12 signs, please remember that all information in this video is copyright of me, Danny Santos. All rights are reserved, and no part of this work may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means without prior written permission. Now, without further ado, my friends, let's jump in. So, as I've created my 12 Steps, 12 Signs, and Astrologer's Guide to Recovery framework, this is a comprehensive combination of all of my 22 plus years of astrological knowledge, all of the ways that I've developed my own theories, my own personal ideas, what astrology is, and how we can use it. And then combining the 12 signs of the zodiac with the 12-step program. So when you're walking through the first step, step one, you're going to have to practice the virtues, the values, the toolkit of Aries. But you don't have to do the 12-step program in order to learn about Aries. This information should be relevant to anybody. And let's say the moon is in Aries, or we've got a significant transit, or we're entering Neptune and Saturn preparing to go into Aries at the time that I'm recording this video. So we can see those principles coming through. The transits are just going to show us, oh, collectively we are studying the first step or the first sign. Now, these things can be exclusive, but they can also go together. So, as I talk about the idea of each sign of the zodiac, there's a bunch of things that I've characterized that go along with each one. So, in astrology, each sign of the zodiac has its own special relationship to light and to darkness. And through my, at this point, 76 ayahuasca ceremonies that I've gone through, I focused a lot on the concept of light and darkness and how it pertains to the zodiac. So each sign of the zodiac has its own archetypal landscape of light, or a permission that has been given to it by God, where it's like allowed to use its relationship to light or to darkness. So when we think about Aries, it's what I call, in the beginning, there was light. So obviously it's the first sign of the zodiac. So we really see this strong connotation of light coming forward. The idea of like, this is a very biblical idea. So it's like the Big Bang is another way of understanding Aries. That's another way that it gets a permission slip to light. It's also what I call just being the light. Aries oftentimes just recognize that they are just the light, and we can think about the sun's exaltation in the sign of just being the light. That's where we see a lot of this brightness popping up. It can also be being in the light, not just being it, but being in the light or going to the light. That's another thing that Aries have a strong tendency towards. If they want light, or if they want to hit the mark or make the goal, they're going to get up and go get it. So they're going to move towards the light. It's also the birth of light, because Aries is the sign of being born, having been birthed, going through the process of being birthed or giving birth. These are all Aries things. And the breath of light. The breath is one of the sacred tools in the toolkit of Aries, so we can also understand the breath of light being a huge thing here. So this is how Aries has its own relationship to light and darkness. And as I continue going forward in my own original book, my theories that I'm writing of the 12 steps, 12 signs, and Astrologer's Guide to Recovery, there's also, each sign gets what's known as the sacred law of that sign. So for Aries, the sacred law that I have come up with is, you are divine. Therefore, you must always be yourself. Self-actualization means being yourself to your full potential. And love means having the courage to authentically be yourself and advocate for yourself for the sake of yourself, others, and the world. And it's important when we think about this sacred law, the distinction of what the sacred laws are. They are the laws that I've written that pertains to each sign and how we are meant to self-actualize or capture the spirit and literally shape-shift into a particular sign of the zodiac. So you have to follow the sacred law. Now, the sacred laws are always broken up into these two distinct parts. So there's this idea of divinity or sacredness. We'll talk about that in later signs. And then it goes down to what love means. So you can use the law in order to achieve something, but if you're doing it for love, you have to follow the second half, and then the whole thing lights up. So love means having the courage to authentically be yourself, to authentically be and advocate for yourself for the sake of yourself, others, and the world. And a really good example of a famous person or a well-known figure who did this was, oh my goodness, what was her name? Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks, who was in the civil rights movement. She had a North Node in Aries in her birth chart. So the North Node is going to show us where the sacred law, the sacred contract, the life lesson lies for an individual. So she was asked to move to the back of the bus. Her legs and her feet hurt that day. She did not move. And she said, I'm not going to move. I'm going to stay right here. So she advocated for herself. And that simple act of self-advocation is what sparked this huge wave within the civil rights movement. We're still talking about it today. It created such a powerful flow, but that was her advocating for herself. So when somebody has their North Node in Aries, part of their life lesson is to learn to advocate for themselves, and that has a positive effect on others and the world. That's how the sacred law works. It's to authentically be yourself and advocate for yourself for the sake of yourself, others, and the world. So people born maybe with the sun in Aries that's well aspected have no problem advocating for themselves. But it's the idea of striving for this energy. So we can see that Aries have no problem diving into things like that. Or if your karmic lesson is Aries, it's learning to dive in or stand up for yourself a little bit more. We can also understand that each sign of the zodiac has its own relationship to the 12-step program. That's the whole premise of my book here. So we understand the healing step for each one. It's that 12-step healing step. And I've augmented the steps myself because I want it to be inclusive for everybody. I want the 12-step program to be accessible, whether you come from trauma or addiction or whatever. So the way that I've augmented this step is we admitted we were powerless over addiction, dysfunction, trauma, and compulsion, that our lives had become unmanageable. So this is the idea that you're just admitting that there's something wrong, admitting that there's a problem. So if somebody has a North Node in Aries, it's to take accountability that they might be the problem. You know, a South Node in Libra person might want to reflect and say, well, that person's the issue or that person's the issue. But a North Node in Aries says, I am the problem. I have to take accountability for myself. And accountability is one of the high virtues of Aries. So we can also think that each sign of the zodiac has its own shamanic practices. So these are like rites of passages or tools within their toolkits or magical things that come into each sign. So the shamanic practice of Aries is birth. First and foremost, it's something that we all have to go through in order to be on this planet, to birth. Or to be birthed. But if you're going to start something like a 12-step program, a creative project, a business, you have to give birth to it. And what's the first step but to breathe? So breathing or breath work, not even breath work, just breathing in general. Breath work's like the higher octave, but breathing is where we see the energy and the vibration of stepping into yourself. To just be yourself is to breathe. If you aren't breathing, you're dying. So it's about taking ownership and sovereignty over yourself to be able to breathe, to claim your power, to step into your power. This is a shamanic practice. The breath becomes the sacred anchor that Aries lives and functions under. So Aries is also the sign of taking the first step. So we think about, like I said, starting a program, starting a business, starting anything, just taking the first step. That belongs to Aries, to begin something. You have to have a certain level of spontaneity or impulsivity, like in Aries, in order to shapeshift into beginning something. We can also see something like athleticism or exercise also falls under Aries. So, you know, getting those muscles, those juices flowing, getting some sweat going. But if that's too much, even walking can fall under Aries, just to simply walk, or movement in general. Movement becomes one of the shamanic practices. We also understand that competition belongs to Aries, or tournament or battle. When we have, you know, going head to head, two strong forces up against each other, there's something chivalrous about it in a way, but or there, at least there should be. But the idea of battle, tournament, and competition, this is really important to the sacred landscape that is Aries. Of course, self-discovery. Self-discovery is a huge one. So, and that can include things like sexual self-discovery, identity discovery, maybe it's gender discovery, or just whatever it might be. It's figuring out, oh, I've discovered myself. I'm discovering myself. Whereas finding yourself comes more to the zodiac sign Capricorn, and we'll talk about how Capricorn is like the higher octave of Aries when I do the Capricorn video. But the idea of becoming a man is also Aries, this rite of passage. And very interesting in modern times when we think about gender being this more fluid thing. So maybe somebody who's a woman who identifies as wanting to be a man and then becomes a trans man, that could be an Aries North Node thing or an Aries thing that happens in an individual. But it's not just about this idea of gender and male and female. Aries is archetypally the masculine or the male, you know? So just think about the gender side of things as just maybe a more ancient framework that we're working with. But it's Aries is also the idea of developing the divine masculine. And it's finding your personal power. And again, this is not to say that women or Libra placements, etc., don't have power. It's just an ancient framework, so we're going to use maybe that looking glass for it. But finding your power belongs to Aries. So, as I have been writing my book, I've developed my own virtue grading scale for each sign of the zodiac, and let me just take a minute to explain this. At the very center, we're always going to have the virtue that belongs to each sign of the zodiac. And there are these little arrows that go up or down, and these are the flows that we can take. Oh, so the virtue is always going to be something that if we use this tool to get to the ascended virtues, we're going to get good things. And if we use this tool to get the descended virtues, we're going to get bad things. The virtue itself should be a word that's neutral. And depending on how the virtue is used, we're either going to ascend or descend. So when we think about the virtue for Aries, it is action. And the purpose of action is to either gain a master lesson at the top or to be schooled by the master teacher at the bottom. And hey, at the very least, if you've got your North Node in the sign of Aries and you're learning from the master teacher, you're still on the right track because you'll be schooled by the teacher until you gain the lesson at the top. So our master teachers are almost like the demons or the life lessons that we have to go up, or not the lessons are at the top, but the life challenges, the things that we have to go up against in life that really make it difficult for us. You know, we have to get schooled by that teacher until we learn well enough what we're going to do in order to ascend or to evolve past something. So the virtue for Aries is action. And when we think about the way of flowing up, if we're going to use this little arrow to go to the ascended virtues, you have to both breathe, that is an important tool in Aries' toolkit, and you have to have the intention, taking your action with an intention. That helps you get some of the higher virtues of Aries. And those ascended virtues, those high virtues are going to be things like courage, sexuality, power, autonomy, assertiveness, spontaneity, loving yourself, being a warrior or a soldier or a hero archetype. We also see accountability falling under Aries, and then anger. Anger can be an ascended virtue as long as it's used properly. And if we can do those ascended virtues, we can gain the master lesson. You have to have a fair amount of those ascended virtues in order to gain the master lesson. And the master lesson of being born in Aries or having a North Node in Aries is self-actualization and authenticity. The purpose of being born in Aries is to authentically be yourself and advocate for yourself for the sake of yourself, others, and the world. So, of course, self-actualization is a lesson here, but also authenticity. If you're using anger and it's authentic, that's good. If you're using anger and it incurs destruction, that's bad. So, this is how we understand the high virtues of Aries. But if we look at this middle virtue here and we start to descend to the lower vibration of Aries, that's because we are either suppressing something or we're suffocating something. Notice that authenticity, if we take it, if you're not authentically expressing yourself, you will suffocate or suppress something. And Aries placements often do because of the master teacher, which we'll get to. So the shadows, or the lower vibrations, opposite of our ascended virtues, the shadows are going to be things like powerlessness, anger, abuse, wrath, rage, grape, impatience, impulsiveness, making mistakes, anxiousness, and frustration. And this is where we're seeing those dark things of Aries. And the shadows often represent something that we either are on the receiving end of, or we've received ourselves and then continue to perpetuate it. So you don't necessarily have to express these shadows within yourself, but you do oftentimes have to be on the receiving end of it to know a thing or two about the shadows of a particular sign of the zodiac. So when we think about the master teachers of Aries, we're going to get shame and violence or destruction. So we understand shame is the most quintessential human emotion. It's something that every single one of us goes through at some point in our lives. And of course, it's the first sign of the zodiac. We can all be unified by the fact that we know a thing or two about shame. It is built into the human condition. So this is how we understand. At the top, we've got authenticity and self-actualization. The virtue, or the neutral version, is action. And at the bottom, we have violence and shame. So if you're taking action, the virtue of Aries, and you are incurring either shame or violence, we know that you're still in the shadows or learning from the master teacher and being schooled by this sign. Or if you are on the receiving end of this thing, if you are taking action but you continue to receive shame and, oh my gosh, uh, guys, help me out here, violence, shame and violence, then that's when we're seeing this master teacher of Aries showing up. So I've also kind of created this, what I call the saving grace of each sign of the zodiac. So the saving grace is basically a virtue that kind of belongs to the opposite sign of the zodiac. But if you're trapped in the master teacher or the shadows of a sign, if you begin to practice the saving grace, you can ascend. It's like an escape kit or something that you can learn to develop that can really help you get out of that low vibration. So again, it's the saving grace comes from the opposite sign of the zodiac, but it's like of the flavor of that particular sign. Let's explain it through Aries to help you understand better. So the saving grace of Aries is going to be forbearance. So this is when we have patient self-control, restraint, or tolerance. It's also the deliberate restraint of reaction, retaliation, or impulsive action despite being provoked. So patience belongs to Libra. If we take the virtue of patience and paint it with an Aries skin, it becomes forbearance. So if an Aries learns to develop forbearance or patient self-control, restraint, and tolerance, this will help them reach self-actualization and authenticity further. It's going to help. It's like a magic escape kit tool that can be used for any sign of the zodiac. It's just taking a page out of Libra's book and then making it a little bit Aries so Aries can learn to become more of themselves better. So that's the saving grace. But remember, until enough is enough, we will live in the shadows of a particular sign of the zodiac and we will be schooled by its teacher. So I got a Venus in Aries myself, so you know that I know a thing or two about this Aries vibration and flavor. So the ruling planet for Aries is Mars, so we can understand Mars is a planet that can incur action, self-actualization and authenticity, but also the shadows of shame and violence. So when we suppress our Mars energy, that's where we're going to see this pop up. But also our authenticity. If you have anger and it's authentic, that's okay. We can work with that. You got to know where to put it or how to use it. We also understand Mars in your birth chart is going to be how you take action in life. It's how you can self-actualize or how you can authentically express yourself. And it's also where you're going to find your shame and your violence. Another way of viewing this is if you have any particular planets in your birth chart that are in the sign of Aries or whatever house Aries rules over, all of these virtues and values of Aries will fall under this part of the birth chart as well. And when we do think about like the values and the toolkit of Aries, obviously this is the sign of like, it's the self. Archetypally, it's you. This is you in the birth chart. So it's how you are showing up in the world. And Aries is the sign of the self. It's being yourself, self-actualizing, or focusing on yourself. And this often has to do with themes of identity. It's your origin story or your birth story. Where did you come from? Who are you? Who am I is a very Aries question. Aries might not ask that question, but the North Node in Aries says, who am I? Not in the context of being in relationship to others, but who am I? Aries is also one of the signs of life, just being yourself. And the toolkit that belongs to Aries is going to be using your breath, being present belongs to Aries, manifestation belongs to Aries, making things happen. And of course, we talked about exercise, movement, action. These are all Aries things, but also achievement, assertiveness, getting what you want, being spontaneous in life, taking risks, learning to put yourself first or focusing on yourself because you're going to gain more when you stop putting your attention on everybody else. We can also think about learning to channel your anger becomes an Aries lesson. And embodying your sexuality, to be who you are authentically, is an Aries lesson, to move out of the shadow of shame and into the self-actualization of authenticity. Not reading too deeply into things is also an Aries lesson. So me as a Pisces, I hyperanalyze everything, and my Saturn and Aquarius, I'm over reading things. But that Aries energy, they don't need to look too deeply. They'd rather be like exercising and doing some stuff and keeping their body busy so that their mind doesn't have to be inundated with information. And again, living in the present, being present. Each sign of the zodiac has its own version of intelligence. So the intelligence of an Aries is going to be physical. And that physical intelligence does have to do with moving the body, understanding how the body works, understanding how things in general work. It's where we can use our muscles and our body to take action, to move through life. So I have a list of mantras that go with each sign of the zodiac. So here, if you need to shapeshift into an Aries, try some of these mantras on and see how this might help you. So the mantras for Aries are master thyself and you can achieve anything. If you learn to master your own astrological birth chart and your Mars especially, you can do anything. It's learning how to take action to get your results and your desires met. The next one for Aries is going to be jump first, look later. It's impulsively doing something. Don't think about all the details now. Just get into it. We can also see this phrase, God helps those who help themselves. Like take accountability. The higher power, the universe, the cosmos, God, whatever you want to call that is up there. It's going to help you more if you are actively trying to help yourself. So that's why when somebody takes the step 1 in the 12-step program, they begin. They just go for it. And then the universe is like, all right, I see you taking that first step. Go for it. The next one is an original one that I wrote. It's let everything you do be filled with the breath of life. So if Aries is the breath of life, let everything you do be filled with that breath. So we can also see a very famous Aries slogan, "Hello Nike." It's a fitness brand. Just do it, Shia LaBeouf style. Just do it. So we understand this energy of just do it is an Aries thing. Like don't hesitate for a moment longer. Just do it. And then the next one is a quote from the Buddha. So you will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. One of my absolutely favorite quotes from the Buddha. And of course, this idea, be courageous enough to be yourself. That is another mantra of Aries. And no matter where you go, there you are. So our Aries friends definitely have this energy and this flavor and this vibration. They're with themselves and they prioritize themselves and they're not even thinking about it. They just are themselves. It's not the most cerebral sign of the zodiac. You got to look at the whole chart because of course some Aries might be like, hey, I'm very cerebral. But the virtue or the act of simply being an Aries is to just be yourself and to respond to life in the moment. So each sign of the zodiac does have what I have developed as this concept of the GIQ, or the God in question. So the God in question for Aries is themselves. So you have to think, you do not get to claim that you are God until you go through the entire 12-step program. You finish that 12th sign of the zodiac, and then you pop back over to Aries. So the idea of knowing that you are God is powerful. But living out your godliness in the world is self-actualization because you are living in your true power. When your power is suppressed, that's when it becomes anger. Or if somebody's taking it from you, or if someone's incurred violence upon you. These are the Aries things of life. But to know that you are God, that's an incredible feat. That is self-actualization, to step into your full godliness. Now, each sign of the zodiac has its own flavor of who and what God is. So I'm not trying to be anti-religious here by saying that you are God. It's just the truth, but you don't get to claim it until you go through the entire program first. Also, this idea of you being God, or each sign having the GIQ, the God in question, you can think about God in this instance not only as like what is God, but what's important, where the focus or the energy is going, or who's holding the talking stick. So if there's a particular Aries placement going on, who's holding the talking stick? What's important? Me at that moment, or in your case, you, the listener. So the idea of being able to give yourself the talking stick, or to be the one wearing the crown, for some people that's hard. For Rosa Parks, she did it. She achieved that North Node by stepping into that role. So we can also understand that each sign of the zodiac has a tarot card in association with it, or a few tarot cards. So the first one I want to talk about is the Emperor. And if you're interested in taking my Foundations of Tarot course, please reach out to me to find out when my next Foundations of Tarot course is. Learn the entire Major Arcana 101 and how to read the tarot intuitively. Would love to work with you. So we've got the Emperor, the energy and the vibration of the Emperor. It is ruled by Aries, and it's linked to the planet Mars. So the Emperor has the Hebrew letter He associated with it. And He represents the window, it's also the breath, and revelation. So revelations belong to Aries as well. And we think about this meaning of the window. Well, the window is also a look through the logical mind, as if seeing something through a glass or a spectacle of clarity. So that's how we understand the window being associated with the Emperor. And Aries, they just kind of see it and clock it for what it is, and they either go towards something or they move towards something else. You know, they're pretty quick at identifying things and how they perceive them. They have a clarity in that way. The idea of breath, being born, the breath of light, the breath of being alive, you know, this is like this Aries energy, the breath of being born. So when we understand the breath being part of this sign, or breath work, it's He, the Hebrew letter, is the structure that allows life to breathe. So the Emperor is also the authority that protects and stabilizes rather than destroys. So that's where we're using the energy of Mars in a really positive way. So its association with Aries, you can also see here there are rams on the side of the card here, or on the front of the card. He's wearing all red, so it's almost like being on fire in this capacity. But the Emperor, he is a divine masculine figure, so we see that gendered kind of language or concept popping up in the tarot. Now, as we go to our next tarot card that's associated with Aries. Oh, I feel a sneeze coming on, and that's appropriate for the Tower card. Hold on, y'all. Okay, the sneeze isn't happening. If I do sneeze, it's the power of the Tower. The power of the Tower. I didn't even notice that. The Tower rhymes with power, power being one of the ascended virtues of the Tower. So when we think about the Tower, it is literally ruled by the planet Mars. So notice the lightning bolt even coming out of the sky. Like, it literally looks like the scorpion's tail, or the planet Mars, that little arrow on the end of the card. So this represents raw eruptive force, or an awakening, and sometimes a very rude awakening. So the Hebrew letter is known as He, which governs speech, command, or the decree. I hear you decree. The concept of speech can also be associated with the Tower of Babel. So the story of the Tower of Babel in the Bible is when all of the different people on earth came together and started to build this tower that was moving so high up, it was trying to become so tall to literally touch God or be greater than God, and God struck the tower down. Humans had created this universal language. They were all speaking and talking together, and the tower was struck down with a bolt of God on behalf of God. So it's the tower falls due to a violation of the sacred laws of the universe. So it's a violation, or because something has been spoken or enacted that cannot be taken back. So when we understand this power, the lightning bolt striking the tower down, this is one of the high virtues of Aries. And it is represented as an expression that breaks form. We understand the idea of the tower breaking form. It's an expression, that lightning bolt, an expression that breaks form. the tower being the form here, the destruction or the violence of something. And even the master teachers of each sign of the zodiac, remember our little chart here, the master teacher can be something that is useful or positive or powerful if used by a discerning hand or mind. So, when we understand he from the emperor, the Hebrew letter, and pe from the tower, there's almost like a bit of poetry going on, he and pe, because he from the emperor is the breath held in form, like the logical emperor. And he, pe, the tower, is the breath expelled as force, like the powerful bolt of God in the tower. So it's like holding your breath is the emperor, expelling your breath is the tower. He and pe, the Hebrew letters that rhyme to each other, and both go to the zodiac sign Aries. Sometimes I'm just like, you can't make this stuff up, it's all there. All right, so the next card that we have for Aries is going to be the Queen of Wands, and she is the feminine embodiment of Aries. So in the tarot deck, all queens are archetypally of the element of water, and then the suit of wands is fire. So this would be water behaving as fire, or water in fire's clothing. So it's the idea that she first feels things like water and then acts accordingly. So she would be a beautiful expression of the forbearance or the saving grace of Aries, to be forbearing, to have a restricted and self-restrained hand. But she's also the witch of the tarot deck. She literally has the archetypal black cat. She's holding a wand. Hello, Hermione Granger. And then she's got personal agency. She uses her will, her strength, her power. She's got like this personal sovereignty. She knows how to use her free will in a way, like an excellent use of free will. You know what I'm saying? But that that personal power. She's still very distinctly feminine, though. So that does not mean that Aries energy is not capable of holding, being, or maintaining femininity. It's about authentically being yourself. So this is chapter 1 of 12 Steps, 12 Signs, An Astrologer's Guide to Recovery. I hope you guys had just as much fun as I did. This is my first time ever attempting a YouTube series like this. If you have any feedback or anything that you enjoyed or would like me to add for future videos, put it in the comments below. And as always, friends, Danny Santos from Santos and the Crystal Visions. I love you. I see you. And baby, I am you. And I believe in you too. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, comment below, put on that notification bell, all the fun things, and check out my music if you want to, and follow me on Instagram at Santos Crystal Visions. This is the Astro Daddy Podcast, out.